Hey Sea Turtles, and welcome back to The Wind in the Willows. Today we are reading Chapter 4, Mr. Badger. At last they heard the sound of slow, shuffling footsteps approaching the door from the inside. There was a noise of a bolt being shot back. The door opened, and there was Mr. Badger. "Oh, Badger, let us in, please!" cried Rat. "We've lost our way in the snow." "Come on into the kitchen," said Badger kindly. "There's a fire and supper." Badger sat the two of them down by the fireside and told them to take off their wet coats and boots. Then he fetched them dressing gowns and slippers and put some sticking plaster on the cut on Mole's leg. And as he started laying the table for a lovely supper, both Rat and Mole felt they were miles away from the wild wood outside. Wow, Mr. Badger's big. And he knows how to cook. Dang, look at that. After supper, they all sat around the fire and talked about Toad's troubles with his new love of driving fast cars, until it was time for bed. Then Mr. Badger took Rat and Mole up to the spare bedroom in the loft, where there were two beds surrounded by all his winter stores. When they came down to breakfast, very late next morning, Rat and Mole found two young hedgehogs eating porridge out of wooden bowls. They also had been lost in the snow, and hardly had they all sat down together when there was a clanging of the doorbell, a stamping of feet in the hall, and in rushed Otter. "They've all been so worried about you on the riverbank," he cried. There's Mr. Otter down there at the bottom. So Mr. Badger's got quite a few guests at his house, and it turns out that everybody was worried about Rat on the riverbank because he hasn't been home in a while. Soon after breakfast, Mr. Badger sent the two hedgehogs off home and suggested the others should stay till lunch. Mole told him how much he liked living underground. "When lunch is over," agreed Mr. Badger, I'll take you all around this place of mine." And true to his promise, he lit a lantern and showed Mole all over his house, through narrow passages, long corridors, vaults, and storerooms. When they got back to the kitchen again, they found that Rat was very restless. "Come on, Mole," he said anxiously. "We must get off. We don't want another night in the wild wood." "It'll be all right," said Otter. "I'm coming with you." So they all said goodbye to Mr. Badger and Otter led them safely home. Oh, that was a short one. That's the end of Chapter 4. Tomorrow we will read Chapter 5, Dulce Dono, which means Home Sweet Home. And we'll see what kind of adventures Mole and Rat have then. Good night, San Pablo.